Hey, it's Joshua Vergara. What's going on, everybody? I am going to take this Nokia 9 Pureview out for a little bit of a camera test. We're going to do kind of a short one here because I'll talk a little bit later about why I'm not giving this phone a full review just yet. But I want to see what this camera can do, and I want to show you some of the results from it on top of using it in something like Adobe Lightroom, which at the beginning of the setup or during the setup, it actually tells you should install it because it'll give you the best results. The raw capture on this phone is one of the highlights. One thing I appreciate, just like right off the bat, I can change it right now on the fly actually. Changing the audio mode when I'm using the front-facing camera, that way the microphones on the front are what are recording me right now. You could do surround, you could do rear also, so it kind of depends what you're recording if you want to just focus the audio on that. So one of the reasons why I wanted to come to the LA Arboretum out here in Arcadia, California, is because there's so many flowers here. There are even peacocks kind of running around, but I'll use the zoom for those because peacocks can be pretty unfriendly. But basically, what I wanted to do here was take a lot of pictures of like wildlife, of some flowers. There's going to be a lot of depth that we can mess with here because the depth mapping of this phone is one of the main highlights of the camera. You have that bokeh mode, but also a monochrome mode, so we can get some really good black and white photos of just sort of the tree life and the flowers that are around here. You know, kind of a funny thing, since there's so many cameras on the rear, I don't know which one to look at specifically. I'm just kind of looking in the direction of the camera, hoping that I'm looking right at you, the audience. Alright, so some thoughts about the general experience so far. Now, one of the reasons why I'm not showing the full phone yet, I'm not doing a full review of this phone, is because there are still some updates that have to come in. The camera app, as you may have heard from a number of people on Twitter, it still needs some work. The actual usability of it, just the quality of life standard of it is still not really where it should be. The camera can lock up a little bit, it can stutter, and even then, the actual processing that's required for the bokeh mode, as well as making the raw file, it takes a long time. So that's something you kind of have to remember about this phone. Even after all the updates happen, I'm sure that raw capture and also bokeh capture will still take a little bit because there's a lot of processing going on in the background. But what we're focusing on here is final results, because the final results of the still photos on this phone should still be pretty great. So with a little bit of tinkering, especially in something like Adobe Lightroom, which I'll do a little bit later, that's what we're focusing on here to see what kind of pictures we can get as a final result. After that orchid room, I did notice one thing about this camera. It comes in really hot. It overexposes, it tends to overexpose, and you have to bring down that exposure compensation quite a bit. And it's something that you could do, or something you have to do with a lot of smartphones, to be fair, but with this one it seems like I have to bring it down much lower than with other phones. You might be noticing already there's no stabilization, not just on the front, which you're seeing right now, and I'm using a stick to get this kind of length out of the phone, but there's also no stabilization for video on the rear as well. And I'm shooting in 4K. I don't see stabilization whatsoever inside of this app. That's a big disappointment. Definitely not going to be for vloggers, this phone. This is for stills enthusiasts. Okay, so I'm changing things up a little bit. Obviously, this footage you're seeing right now is not coming from the phone because I had to use the phone to show you a bit of a workflow in Adobe Lightroom. So we're gonna open that up and we can actually add some photos here. I already have it set up so that it shows all of the raw files from that shoot at the LA Arboretum. Let's make it a 4x5. Nah, let's make it actually a 1x1. Yeah, there you go, because we have the flowers there. Cool. And then the next thing I'll do is mess with the highlights and the shadows. This is usually the first thing that I end up doing. So we go into the light area. Since I brought down the exposure slider all the way, if I did want to get a little bit more brightness in here, I can always bring up the exposure, which doesn't look too bad. I probably don't want to go too far with it, so let's say we give it a 0.60. So from there, we can also add in a little bit of contrast because there's not a whole lot of contrast in photos straight out of the camera here. So we can add a little bit of contrast to really make the lines of that flower pop a bit more. And again, we're not going to go too far with it. Now, as far as highlights are concerned, I don't really see too many blown out areas. You might see a little bit at the very edges of this flower, but that's not a big deal to me. So the one I will probably mess with more are the shadows. So we can bring in a little bit more detail. If I were to go all the way to 100, you could see that much more of the photo becomes brightened, and it's a much more evened out photo. So if I bring it all the way down, you can see what parts get darker. If I bring it up, you can see what parts get some light. So that little waterfall that was right here, I want to get a little more detail out of that. So let's go up to maybe 50 on the shadows. I think that looks pretty good. Now, the only thing that's really missing in the photos here, on top of a little bit of contrast, is saturation. So that makes a little bit of sense. After all, we are supposed to get into Lightroom and kind of add in what's missing. So if we go over to the color area and we hit down here for saturation, I can bring it up way, way, way up. You can see how the greens are coming in, all of that green. The purple of the orchid is looking even better. And really, it's just the green is what I'm really looking at here because you want that green to really pop. So let's bring it up to maybe about 25. So this is what it would look like if you were using, let's say, a DSLR and it had a vivid color profile. This is what it would look like straight out of there. But on a phone like this, it's going to be much more muted because you get in here and you change it up yourself. All right, so we have the example here. I'll obviously show you the side-by-side in a little bit, but if we were to just hold down here, you would see just how much we were able to pull out of this photo because of all of the raw data and everything that Lightroom is able to do with that data. So here are the side-by-side, so you can kind of see it just at the same time. Definitely enjoy what I can do with these photos, the raw DNG files that the Nokia 9 Pureview provides. And if you really want to get the best out of this phone, you definitely have to get into Lightroom and sort of mess around for yourself. Kind of find your own style and really make these photos exactly the way you want them to look. So I took a few more of the photos and I just did some edits in Lightroom. So why don't you go ahead and enjoy those while I exit this video. So the main thing that I want to put out there is that even though updates are going to be coming for the Nokia 9 Pureview to enhance or even to just fix a few of the things that might be going on with the camera app and with the phone at large, this is just what you saw in the example is basically the way it works. DNG files are large, they require a lot of processing, so they will take a little bit longer than just getting a photo and then messing with it with filters and whatnot. So that workflow is definitely for the stills photography enthusiast. So you have to really keep that in mind. But with all of the things that do have to kind of get fixed with the general user experience on the quality of life everyday usage, once those are all done, I'm going to go ahead and do a full review of the Nokia 9 Pureview. But for now, I hope this will be enough for you to see what kind of quality you can get out of the phone. But from there, I'm going to go ahead and call it on this one. Thank you so much for watching. And let me know what you think about all of these pictures and all these clips in the comments comment sections down below. If you have a Nokia 9 Pureview, why don't you let me know what your experience has been like as well. But from there, I'm going to go ahead and finish it off. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe to my channel. If you haven't already, consider hitting that bell over on the side so you can keep up with whatever comes next. And from there, I'll just remind you to enjoy your tea, everybody.